Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something, well, pretty profound. And let's be honest, it can seem incredibly complex.
Definitely.
We're diving into the system of the 6 centers, the Ṣaṭcakra, in Sanskrit, looking specifically at how it's presented in Arthur Avalon's major work, The Serpent Power.
That's right. And we're really zooming in on one part, Avalon's translation and notes on a text called The Description of the 6 Centers, the Ṣaṭcakra-Nirūpaṇa. This text is, well, it's a cornerstone in Tantra and Yoga Shastras. It gives this really detailed map of the subtle body.
So our mission today, pulling just from those specific pages Avalon translated, pages 317 to 488, actually is to pull out the core ideas about these 6 energy centers.
Yeah, trying to clarify what they are, where this text says they are, and why they're so important for Kuṇḍalinī Yoga as it's described here.
Exactly. Trying to help you get a quicker handle on some pretty intricate concepts.
It is dense stuff. I mean, it's talking about energy, anatomy, spiritual physiology. It's not quite like our standard Western view of the body.
Not at all.
But the text itself, it offers this remarkably structured way of looking at it. So our aim is really to walk you through that structure, kind of piece by piece.
Okay, let's unpack this then. Before we jump into the centers one by one, the source sets up some foundational ideas. You need the basics first, right?
Absolutely. You need to know the landscape, the energy involved.
So what's the main energy source in this system?
It's all about Kuṇḍalinī Shakti. That's the famous Serpent Power. The text describes her as this fundamental energy coiled up, sleeping, basically at the very bottom of the subtle spine.
In the lowest center.
Exactly, in the Mūlādhāra. And the whole yoga practice described here, often called Laya Yoga, is about waking her up and getting her to move upwards.
Okay, awaken and ascend.
Yeah.
How does she travel? What are the pathways?
That's where the nadis come in.
Uh-huh.
The source talks about these as energy channels, like currents in the subtle body. The big one is the Sushumna Nadi. It runs right up the center of the spinal column. The text calls it the Meru.
The central axis.
Right. And then on either side, you have Ida and Pingala. They're sometimes called sympathetic cords, or even, interestingly, air tubes. They carry different energy polarities.
And the centers, the chakras, they're connected to this.
Yes. They're located either right within the Sushumna or very closely connected to it. And this whole nadi network, it's all linked.
It sounds like a kind of subtle nervous system almost. And this connects to prana, our life force.
Precisely. Prana is the vital energy that flows through these nadis, and the text makes it clear that cleaning out these channels, purifying the nadis, is a really important first step.
Why is that?
Well, you need clear pathways for Kuṇḍalinī to move safely and effectively once she's awake. It's powerful energy. So you've got the potential energy, Kuṇḍalinī, the pathways, nadis, and the moving energy, prana.
Got it. Kuṇḍalinī, nadis, prana, the key components. Now, the main focus of the text we're looking at, the Ṣaṭcakra-Nirūpaṇa, is these 6 centers. How are they usually pictured?
They're almost always described as lotuses. Padma. Think of them like spinning vortexes of subtle energy, points of consciousness.
Lotuses with petals.
Yeah, each one has a specific number of petals, and each petal is linked to particular vibrations, sounds, letters. It's very detailed. They're focal points where different kinds of forces or levels of awareness show up in the body.
Right. Let's start the journey then, from the bottom up, like the text does. First stop, Mūlādhāra chakra.
Okay, the Mūlādhāra. This is the root, the foundation. The text places it in the subtle spine below the genitals, right at the base. Avalon's commentary suggests maybe the sacrococcygeal plexus area in physical terms, but we always have to remember it's primarily a subtle location.
And this lotus has 4 petals.
That's right, 4 petals. And the text is very specific about the Sanskrit letters on them. Ba, Sha, Sha, and Sa. It might seem like just letters, but the tradition really emphasizes these sound vibrations, these varnas, as being part of the center's energy.
Interesting. What element is associated with this base chakra?
That would be earth, Prithvi Tattva. And the quality associated with earth here is cohesion, solidity, structure.
Makes sense for a foundation.
Exactly. And this element is also said to stimulate the sense of smell. So the text links it to the nose, the organ of smell, and also the feet as the organ of action.
And there are deities associated too.
Yes, Brahma and the Shakti called Dakini. Their presence points to the creative power and the energy tied to the physical world, since the center is the most grounded, the most connected to the gross body.
And crucially, this is where Kuṇḍalinī hangs out.
Yes, this is her main home base, where she lies coiled and dormant. The text often describes her as a subtle light there.
Okay, base established. Moving up from Mūlādhāra, what's the next center?
That's the Svadhisthana chakra. Location-wise, it's at the spinal center just above the genitals. Avalon tentatively links it to the sacral plexus.
And a different number of petals here.
Yep, this one has 6 petals, and again, specific letters, ba, ma, ya, ra, la. The focus on the sound is consistent.
And the element changes from earth to
Water, Tattva. Its quality is described as contraction, or maybe fluidity is a better word, and it stimulates the sense of taste.
taste. Okay.
So it's linked to the tongue, the organ of taste, and the hands as the organ of action here. The deities are Vishnu and Rakini.
Vishnu, the preserver.
Right, representing preservation activity at this level. And the text actually makes a point here, distinguishing the yogic focus on this center, raising energy upwards from just, say, sexual energy. It stresses the spiritual aim.
Good distinction. So earth, then water. Third center up is Manipura. That's the navel area, right?
Exactly. Spinal center in the region of the navel. Anatomically, maybe the solar plexus, the lumbar plexus area. It's once bigger, described as a 10-petaled lotus.
10 petals. More letters, I assume. What's the element here?
Fire.
Yeah.
Tejas or Agni Tattva. And its quality is expansion, heat production. It's a very dynamic element.
And fire stimulates sight.
Yes, sight, which connects it to the eyes, the organ of sight, and interestingly, the anus as the organ of action.
Fire and sight. That's a really interesting link. Who presides here?
Rudra and Lakini, they embody transformative power. The text also gives a specific Bīja Mantra, a seed sound, for this center, Ram.
Ram. Like a key sound for meditation on this center.
Precisely. Used to connect with or activate its energy. The source also connects this center to Agni, the digestive fire in the umbilical region, linking the subtle to the physiological.
Right. So we've gone from earth's stability, water's fluidity, to fire's dynamic energy. Next up, Anahata chakra, the heart center.
Yes, the spinal center in the heart region, cardiac plexus or thoracic area. This lotus has 12 petals.
12 petals, another unique set of sounds. What's the element for the heart?
Air, Vayu Tattva. Its quality is described as general movement, pervasive movement.
Okay. And air stimulates.
The sense of touch. So it's linked to the skin, the organ of touch, and the penis as the organ of action. The presiding deities are Isha and Kakini.
Representing lordship and action at this level.
Something like that, yeah.
Air, movement, touch, heart. Makes intuitive sense. Climbing higher, we reach the throat. Vishuddha chakra.
Right, the spinal center in the throat region. Cervical plexus area, sometimes called Kuṇḍamula. This is a 16-petaled lotus.
16 petals. And I think the text links these to the Sanskrit vowels.
It does, yes. All 16 vowels, from A to A. This connection to the core sounds of the language is seen as really significant. It suggests the center is vital for, like, cosmic sound or shabda and expression.
And the element here is ether, akasha.
Correct, akasha tattva. Ether or space.
What's its quality? What sense is linked?
Its quality is giving space. The principle of space itself, pervasiveness. It stimulates the sense of hearing. Which links it to the ears, obviously, and the mouth, particularly speech, as the organ of action. The deities are Sadashiva and Shakini, representing a very high level of consciousness and power associated with pure space and vibration.
So Kasha isn't just emptiness.
No, not according to the text. It's described more like an ultimate substance, a potentiality that underlies the other forces, even mediating light transmission. It's fundamental space.
Wow. Okay. Earth, water, fire, air, ether. Napping the elements right up the spine. That brings us to the final one of the main 6, Ājñā chakra, the third eye center.
Yes, located centrally in the region between the eyebrows. Avalon mentions possible correlations, cavernous plexus, pineal, pituitary, but emphasizes these are tentative. The text describes a subtle center.
And this one's quite different. Only 2 petals.
Exactly. Just 2 petals with the letters Ha and Krisha. And significantly, it's not linked to one of the 5 gross elements like the lower centers. It's associated directly with manas, the mind.
The mind itself.
Yes, the mental faculties. It represents a higher level of subtle organization. The deities are Shambhu and Hakini, linked to divine consciousness and knowledge.
And the text calls it the causal region.
It does, and the abode of the supreme Bindu Parashiva, like a point of pure consciousness, pure potential. It's said that consciousness itself is realized here. It's seen as the seat of the subtle mind, intuition, higher perception.
So we've mapped out this incredibly detailed system. Centers, elements, senses, sounds, deities. What's the bigger picture here? What does this Ṣaṭcakra-Nirūpaṇa say this all means?
Well, the takeaway from this system is that these centers aren't just, physical spots. They represent different layers of reality, different levels of consciousness, different stages in how energy and awareness manifest.
Like a map of inner reality.
Exactly. It's like the macrocosm reflected in the microcosm of the human subtle body. And the whole point of rousing Kuṇḍalinī and guiding her up through these centers, the process called Ṣaṭcakra-Bīja, piercing the centers, is presented as the actual path to spiritual freedom, to union with the supreme consciousness at the top.
And this is where, for me, it gets really interesting how the source connects absolutely everything.
It's incredibly systematic.
Yeah, the text lays out all these correspondences for every center: elements, senses, organs, letters, seed sounds, deities, even different forms of sound itself, Śākta.
Right, like how Shabda evolves from para, the unmanifest sound in Mūlādhāra,
Through pashanti, visualized sound, up to the heart, anahata.
where you get the unstruck sound,
Then bayama, the middle sound, up to the throat, vishuddha.
before it finally becomes Vaikari, spoken language, emerging from the throat center. It's a whole progression.
It really shows the tradition's view of the human being as like a mini universe, right? With the subtle body mirroring these fundamental cosmic principles.
Absolutely. And these descriptions from texts like the Ṣaṭcakra-Nirūpaṇa, they provide the whole framework, the theory, and the meditative map for what's called Laya Yoga.
Laya Yoga.
Yeah, it's often translated as the yoga of dissolution or absorption. The idea is that as Kuṇḍalinī rises, the practitioner uses these centers to dissolve the limited mind, the individual sense of self, into higher, more universal states of consciousness.
Dissolving upwards. And the journey doesn't actually stop at Ājñā. Between the eyebrows, there's something beyond the six.
Correct. The ultimate destination is the Sahasrara, the 1,000-petaled lotus at the very crown of the head, often associated with the cerebrum.
1,000 petals.
Yeah, though the source describes it less as a chakra like the others and more as the supreme center. The ultimate abode where Shiva, pure consciousness, and Shakti, cosmic power, are in union.
So that's where Kuṇḍalinī goes.
It's seen as the seat of the fully ascended Kuṇḍalinī Shakti and the true home of the jiva, the individual soul, once it's liberated.
The final goal: union, liberation.
Exactly. It represents the culmination of piercing the six centers, leading to ultimate knowledge, bliss, the whole point of this particular yogic path.
Okay, so we've taken quite a journey there, guided by Avalon's translation of the Ṣaṭcakra-Nirūpaṇa. We went through the six main centers: Mūlādhāra, Svadhisthana, Manipura, Anahata, Vishuddha, and Ājñā. And we touched on the culmination, the Sahasrara. We've tried to unpack the key things the text assigns to each location: petals, elements, senses, actions, deities, sounds.
And it's worth stressing, again, these detailed maps come from very specific yoga and tantra scriptures as Avalon presents them. They offer a particular, quite intricate view of our subtle anatomy and the path to realization within that specific tradition.
It really is a framework for practice, for contemplation.
Yeah.
Which brings up a big question maybe for you listening. When you look at this ancient, incredibly detailed system mapping energy centers to elements, senses, sounds, levels of consciousness, how does that resonate or maybe clash with our modern ways of thinking about the mind-body connection, or even consciousness itself?
It's a fascinating encounter, isn't it, between this esoteric philosophy and physiology and our contemporary understanding.
It really is. And maybe a final thought to leave you with, drawing from the text. Think about that precise correlation between subtle sounds, the varnas, the Bīja Mantras, and each center's specific energy and element.
Yeah, the vibration aspect.
What might that incredibly detailed sound map suggest about how this tradition viewed the role of sound and vibration? Not just as something we hear, but maybe as fundamental building block of reality, of consciousness itself. Something to ponder from this deep dive into the Ṣaṭcakra-Nirūpaṇa.